And in the meantime, the Vitruvian extraterrestrial on the other wall is saying, what about me? So you just don't know what could be happening. It could be pretty exciting. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting little kind of side thing. But I also want to say that over the last couple of weeks, I've come by here about once a week and met with the team to talk about the planning, the implementation of this show. And I learned a lot, because what goes into putting on a show like this, I mean, I've been to so many openings here for other artists, and I kind of took it for granted as to what they do. But between putting the program together, picking out pieces, doing the brochure, doing the postcard, doing the website, doing the marketing, there's just a tremendous amount of effort that goes into putting on the show. So I want to thank John, Sherry, Claire, and Faye for the amazing work that they've done. So we shall give them a round of applause. I'm appreciative of what they've done. So a couple of things I'm going to talk about, and I'll start by telling you that I guess you can tell that I'm sort of fond of stones and crystals, you think?
Yeah.
You know, they communicate at many levels. And I mean, you can look at the geology of the stones in terms of the diversity. I mean, you could spend a lifetime studying stones and crystals and all that. They're very old. They go back many, many millions of years. And if you consider 50 million or 100 million years, that's just a drop in the bucket. They just go back a really long way. And it's mind-boggling, because I don't think anybody can even fathom the kind of time frame in terms of magnitude that these rocks are. But they're really, really old. So I think that's pretty cool. There's also some physical properties that you may have heard about. Quartz crystals, for example, have, I think it's called piezoelectric properties. Those of you that are scientists types out there know what that is. Basically taking electromagnetic waves and transducing them so that you can turn mechanical energy to electrical energy to electrical current and so on. But that's what's behind radios, sound equipment in terms of amplification, watches and crystals. For years, we use crystals. So there are all these interesting properties that stones and crystals can have. And if you consider the idea that energy is transferred through a stone, it's not too far of a jump to say that there could be metaphysical properties of stones and crystals as well. And if you think about it, over time, over history, cultures for hundreds and thousands of years have used stones and crystals in their rituals, in their religion, ceremonial dress, and the list goes on. And today, people wear gemstones, they wear stones and crystals on their bodies. My wife Heidi is wearing them on her neck right now. She's got Icarus on her neck. And so, anyway, Icarus gets around. So stones are amazing, and they're also beautiful. Well, not all. Some rocks are pretty ugly. But many stones and crystals can be very beautiful. So the trick is to find the beautiful ones. So that's important. I also want to talk about the roots of how this all kind of happened. Way back in, I won't bore you with the details, but high school, college days, I did a lot of painting, a lot of landscape painting. Would go out into the field and paint the mountain scene on a Saturday afternoon and have a great time doing that. And it was all about realism and sort of copying what's out there. And I started doing that with a camera as well, taking photographs of landscapes, and I've done that for decades. But back in the college days, I started to feel that I wanted to go a little further, and I started to get an interest in abstract art. So I looked at the early modern movements of art. So starting with the post-impression, with the impressionist artists like Monet and Van Gogh, I really loved the way they would use their brush strokes in diverse ways to create movement and light. And from there I went on to the abstract expressionists, people like de Kooning, Kandinsky, Pollock, those kind of people. And the fact that they would do images that were not really focused on reality, but more on evoking emotion. And I thought that was really exciting. And sort of distortion, the subjective distortion of imagery. From there, going on to Cubism, works by Braque, Picasso, the way they would take form, geometry, mass, and fragment it, and then analyze, synthesize, and reconstruct in unique, abstract ways. Another one was Marcel Duchamp, one of my favorites, because he did the Mood Descending the Staircase, which has always been one of my all-time favorites. And then the refreshing works of the surrealist artists like Salvador Dali, where they took surprise, whimsical juxtapositions. So all of these kinds of things really were exciting to me, And I thought that that was really what I would like to do, but I became an architect instead. But I'm very happy with that, and I'm not regretting it. Speaking about architecture, we talk about influences, because these art influences have stayed with me through the years. But having an architectural training is basically about going to a design school where you learn about art history, architectural history, design and building construction. But then there's the studio experience where you're given a problem by your professor, a project to design hypothetically, and you learn about process, design methodology, and you basically learn to be playful. You learn to look at options and alternatives and basically dissect and put back together and come up with a solution. So all the architects in the room, there's quite a few in here, know what I'm talking about. And that is basically a mindset that becomes a part of who you are. And sometimes Heidi says, why do you do that? So I can't help, I'm just an architect. But it's just the way we are. Architects are strange, we know that. But it's the way we think. And so I use that mindset when I do my photography. And I think that's part of the reason why I've done some of this stuff. So that's some of that. Now, the next thing I want to say is, where did this begin? Back in late 2004, one of my friends who's an architect was visiting our house and saw my stones and crystals. We were already collecting them, and they were in our sunroom, and asked me if I had ever thought of photographing them. And I honestly said, no, I haven't, because why would I do that? It's kind of strange. So I never did that. So a few months, maybe 2 months later, I finally got around to it. I guess it was a winter, it was in January, not like this, but it was in January, a normal January. And I tried to photograph a few of my stones and crystals, and they were miserable. They were absolutely horrible results. I think everybody would have given up by that, but I didn't want to give up. So I tried it a couple more times. It's all about learning the right technique in terms of the right equipment, the right lens, the right lighting, and so on. So that took a few months to get that down. So that's when it all started, and it just took off from there. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the process. So how do I start out with this whole thing? Well, I call it, step number one is hunter-gatherer. John alluded to this in his introduction, because basically I am a bloodhound. I go to the shops, the general mineral shops, the art place down near the mall, the dinosaur shop there. They know me regularly there pretty well. So I go to the annual show up near Springfield in August. They have a large general mineral show where I can go in and get some pieces. And I also have been to the Tucson show, if any of you have ever heard of that one out in Tucson. Every February, it's happening right now, but I just couldn't make it this year. But every February they have it, and it's the whole month. And basically the entire city is covered with about 1,000 vendors. And you can just about go anywhere into trade show places, exhibition halls, motels, hotels, and they sell rocks and crystals. And so that's where I get my stuff. And when I find something that I like, I pick it up and I look at it. And in time, you get good at knowing when it's worth doing something with. And sometimes it can be pretty expensive. So if you're going to buy it, you want to make sure that it's got some real potential. And sometimes you buy one and it just doesn't fly, but then afterwards give it to somebody as a gift. So it's not there's always something. In fact, you can look at these those two cases that I bought, and there are some samples.
I gathered this one myself.
But so anyway, once I buy the piece and I take it home, then okay, you got to have the right timing. You can't just do it you just can't do it if you got a million things on your mind. You got to pick a nice Saturday when your wife is at a dog show or something. There's no interruption, whatever. Not that she's interrupting me, but she's pretty good at that. But you need a good time to do it when you really get in the mode. Now, anybody who's a photographer knows what I mean by being in the mode. Because when you go out to a landscape and you want to photograph something, you want to do a photo shoot, you get in the mode. You open up your senses, your eyes, your ears. All your senses open up and you're out there to get that shot, get that moment. And it's the same kind of thing, except I'm just doing it in my little studio with some lights. But I'm doing the same thing because I take one of those stones and I'll devote an entire afternoon with that stone. And I'll look at it for composition, as far as how it's formed by colors, textures, tonal gradations, patterns, all those things I look for. And when I start looking at it through the lens, it's like taking a hike through that stone, and I can find different parts of that stone that I like. And I'll take a series of images, not just one. A lot of times I'll shoot, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 images of that one piece so that I can guarantee that I'm going to get something good out of it. But so I go through that process. Now, as I'm looking at the stone and looking at these wonderful little patterns, I open up my mind to start wandering, and I have to have the right music on too, by the way. I forgot that. You can't do it without music. It has to be, it can't be rock, heavy rock kind of thing. It has to be ambient, electronica type stuff.
So rock?
No. Try it.
Oh, they just asked. No drugs, no drugs.
Sort of that chill kind of music. That's the way to go. It's a recipe. So anyways, so I get in that right mode, and then as I'm looking, I start to think of stories that come from various sources: history, mythology, geography, biology, you name it. Any subject is fair game, because that's where I get a lot of my subject matter. So as I'm thinking about those kinds of stories and narratives, I start forming in my mind as I'm meanwhile looking through the camera, doing my little technical stuff. I'm also opening my mind to past dreams, inner hidden dreams, sort of memories that are sort of in the back storage cabinet in my mind, and something might get triggered, and that's happened many times. It's almost crazy, because I've had dreams that I had when I was 12 years old that would all of a sudden be triggered by some image in a rock. Who would think? But that's what happens. So that's how and that's where the titles start to come forth, because it's not just about the graphics. The title is, to me, just as important, because there's that connection with the word, the text with the stone, and so that's important. And so the act of creation, or the act of creativity, results in what I call imaginary realms that can take in everything from ancient fantasies, future fantasies, cosmic and planetary scapes, what I call them, because they're not from this planet, you know that. And so it could traverse space, time, and dimension as well. Now, that leads you to other dimensions, alternative realities, all of that. And at this point, you're probably thinking, I'm not from this reality, right? Well, I assure you, I am from this reality. I'm well-rooted in this one. But I like to take journeys to these other ones. And I don't take drugs either.
No drugs involved.
It's all about,
don't need them.
It's all about having fun, and it's all about evoking the imagination. But we're a science fiction writer.
Doesn't need them, trust me.
So anyway, that's my attitude. I'm sticking with it. So that's what I do with the process. And every stone has a story. I started to talk about that. Every single piece has a narrative that goes with it. And you can agree with the story, or you could think of something totally different, and that's perfectly okay. I told this one on the radio that my mother will sometimes look at my images, I email them to her, and she'll say, I think it's this. Is that the right answer? There's no right answer. Whatever you think it is fine with me. Knock your socks out. It's whatever works for you is fine. So it's open for interpretation, certainly. I mean, it's not that I'm going to control your mind. I can try to lead your mind in that direction.
Yes.
You don't have to go there if you don't want. So that's that's the process. I've been working for a number of years with the various fine art photo papers, and that's been great. But about a little over a year ago, I started thinking about other types of materials, and specifically metal. And I had read about this metal process. It's called an infused dye metal printing. And I did my research, found that there's about 3 good companies in the country that do this sort of thing. And I went ahead and started to do that. Basically, how it works is they take a sheet of aluminum and spread some resin on the surface, and then they take my image and print it on a piece of good paper in reverse, and then that is placed onto the resin, onto this sheet of metal, which is placed into a hot press. Then it's heated up very rapidly, and very rapidly, so that the dyes within, it's a sublimation dye process. The dye is converted to a gas, and now this gas permeates and gets infused into the resin on that metal. That's the best I can explain it. Because I don't understand it beyond that. But a lab will do this.
Just not
And we
right.
work closely with them to do the processing. So the one behind me and the two over there are these first attempts at doing these metal prints. Another technique that I've been playing with since last February, about a year ago now, is doing these multiple images that John brought up in the intro. I had an image of a piece of Petersite that I thought was kind of interesting, but when I did the first piece of it, I didn't think it was going anywhere. It just didn't seem to have enough in it. So I thought about copying it and then rotating it 180 degrees and placing it adjacent to the first one. And then, so now I had two images. And that one, it's been in here before. It's called the Code of Prophecies. I think it's in the back room now. That made me think, let me take that to another level. Now, here's that architectural training thing. You know, if I wasn't an architect, I probably wouldn't have done this. But I thought, let me try 4 of these and do an array of them. So the next one was that one. It was Essence of Spirit. And basically, that's actually 4 of them put together, because each one of the 4 is one of those quads. Basically, what it is I take the root image, which is 1/4 of that square, and then copy, reverse, copy, mirror in both axes, and then reconnect them. This is that cubist thinking I was telling you about before. So it's a fragmentation, redoing the construct into something completely new. And when I found, the very first time I did it, I got these demonic baby looks, these demon babies, and it scared the heck out of me. They were really scary. I had a hard time sleeping at night. I really did. And Eddie kept saying, why can't you sleep? Demon babies. So I went to work the next day, and I couldn't get anything done. I think Mark said something looks. You could tell that wasn't quite there. So when I got home that night, I redid it. And this time I knew what I was doing, because now I could rework the edges so that the borders were shifted in a way that I got rid of the demon babies. And instead got these amazing things, because I noticed that the more I looked, the more I saw elements that were common to multiple belief systems. So I saw elements of Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Viking, American Indian, Druidism. All of these various religions were all in there. So I saw woolly mammoth, I saw Merlin. There's all kinds of stuff in there. So I thought, if you think about the common...
There's no mushrooms involved, I'm telling you.
All these religions, they all seem to think about a higher power. That seems to be a common process, or common thinking. So if you think about this idea of a higher power, whether it's a god or a force or whatever it may be, it brings to mind things like, well, the conflict between good and evil, how to better oneself, and also the notion of soul or inner spirit. So if you think about your inner spirit connecting with the higher power, well, then maybe you become eternal. So these kind of thoughts were going through my mind as I'm doing my little narrative in my head, and the title came to me, Essence of Spirit. So you can see it's a roundabout way of getting the title. A lot of effort just to get a title, but it worked. So that was that one. Another one I want to talk about is there, Icarus. Now this one is by the way, before I do that, this was from Petersite, and Petersite comes from Namibia. So they come from Namibia and China, but this particular one was from Namibia. Now that one is a piece of black opal, and I think they come from Australia. That one immediately looked to me like something from Greek mythology, and so I had to struggle with that one for a while, but I kept seeing layers of water and mountain and rock outcroppings, and then I saw that sort of funny smudgy thing on the right, but I almost wanted to clone it out. But then one of my friends, who I think is here tonight, said maybe it could be something like Icarus. And then that opened up everything, because that's Icarus. He's tumbling. See how his body's all contorted? It's because he didn't listen to his father, Daedalus. Remember, his father said, don't fly too close to the sun, because your wings are going to fall off, because the wax is going to melt. Well, he didn't listen to his father. So he flew too close to the sun. The wings melted. His wax melted and the wings fell off. So here you go he's got pride. He just was arrogant, and look what happens. He's falling to his demise. So there's a duality here, because on the one hand you have a nice landscape, and mingled with that is this tragedy of this, the Greek tragedy, I guess. So that's where Icarus comes from. And then the last piece behind me is Maya Stellartronica. And this is photographed from a piece of bismuth. Bismuth is an interesting, it's the only crystal that I have photographed that is not organic, and it's man-made actually. Now you can get bismuth that's natural, and it has a very curvy organic look to it, but when it's made to look like rectilinear geometry, it's made in the lab. And so it's called a pseudo-cubic lab-formed crystal. And what's interesting about it is that the oxide layers on the surface, which are actually corrugated, you can see that piece in that little display box. It's right in there. But the oxide layer has multiple wavelengths, which in turn reflect the different colors. And that's how you get these wonderful, different purples, oranges, blues, and so on. So that's what I used to photograph for this piece. And this is another one of the quads. The first piece was here, then it was copied, moved, and so on. So Maya Stellartronica, Maya because it has a look of the Mayan art and architecture to me, but it doesn't look like it's from this planet. It's Mayan, but not quite Earth Mayan. So stellar makes it think of a galaxy far, far away. So that's stellar. It's way up there. I don't know where, but it's from far away. And Tronica, because it also looks to me like either a circuit board or a machine or a robot or a spaceship or any one of those kind of things. So Tronica seems to make sense. Heidi didn't like that. She tried to talk me out of it. I
Still don't like it.
I'm just going to stick with it. So Maya Stellartronica. And by the way, on another level, if you think of it, this also could be a female robot. So there are the eyes, and it's just this female robot. So I'm thinking, that's her name, Maya. Remember I said Icarus is talking to Maya? Well, that's
Yeah,
so,
he's out there.
Maya is her first name,
He's out there.
and Stellartronica is her last name. Stellar is her maiden name, so that's. So yeah, everyone has a story. But I'm willing to take questions.
Well, I'm not familiar with the mythology of the East Coast too much. I was in the Hawaiian Islands, and so in Kauai Island, it's not hard to find people who are channeling various entities, right? And so it's not that hard to learn how to do it either. And I'm a painter, as you know, and a visual artist, but when I'm putting something over there, which is for me on a canvas, I think I'm in direct communication. And I travel all over the universes, right, many of them, like you seem to do with what you're calling your imagination. But my question is, do you feel you have direct contact with a variety of entities that are in other lives, other dimensions?
No. Not yet, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. I mean, I can get very spiritual about it. I don't mean to be flippant, but
No, so you attribute things to the imagination.
Imagination,
and that's as far as you're willing to go.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just not going to get into it. But I think that there could be more powers and more energies out there. But it's not something I talk about freely, or because I think that those are personal kinds of things.
George, excuse me,
Yes.
having watched you work, I think the answer to your question is that there is a very strong intuitiveness within George, and things speak to him, and I can identify with that because I'm the same way. Things speak to me. I mean, sometimes just as if they had a physical voice. And when I watched George work, he will intuitively focus on something that speaks to him. He may not know why, any more than I know why. And correct me if I'm wrong, George. But, I mean, I'm the same way. It's like something tells me to do this right here, right now, period, end of discussion, and I do it. Something attracts George right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't.
And
Well, you can push it further.
I think
what I'm trying to get
I
to.
think it's more intuitive than it is communicative in terms of entities.
We could talk about it more later.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions, comments?
Very good, it's very beautiful.
Thank you.
Other than the fact that it's gorgeous to look at.
It's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous.
Well, feel free to.